say for the sake of argument, there's this acclaimed science fiction writer and essayist who is writing his memoir in the late 80s. I'm just going to drop the pretense right now and say his name is Samuel R. Delany. He's been name dropped on this channel before and probably will be again because he's my favorite writer. So Delany's writing about his experience as a young gay man in the late 50s, early 60s, which is to say, nearly a decade before Stonewall, and he opts to share a couple of anecdotes which I will relate to you now. One is about the time when he decided to come out to his therapy group. While being gay in mid-century New York brought Delany a lot of joy, he found himself describing his life to the group as though being gay were something he was trying to fix. By reflex, he presented himself as lonely and ashamed, though in reality he was neither, and while he did eventually describe himself more accurately, he can't help but muse in the book on the limits of language at the time. Back then, the word gay was explicitly associated with high—
Now, okay. That did look a lot like teenage Stephen Fry. But yeah, PPG, we need to organize and use all the levels of power to move the Overton window to the left, and that includes in primaries against neoliberals, tankies. You have to work with these people, like the tankies, neoliberals, libs, selectively. When it suits the purpose, work with them. Do not rely on them to make the change for you. Nobody is coming to save us. Change comes from the bottom up. Nothing good ever trickles down from the top. You want to make change? It comes brick by brick from the bottom up.
High camp and effeminacy, where Delany's more of a bear, a term that was not yet in common usage. The default term was homosexual, which was then a medical classification for what was deemed a mental disorder. Queer and the F word were still slurs that had yet to be reappropriated, so to describe himself were technically available. They all carried the connotations of the most popular narrative about gay men, that they were isolated, aberrant, and pitiable. Another story is about Delany being present for a police raid at a truck stop where queer men would meet for casual hookups. By the nature of being hidden in the bushes or secreted between parked semi-trailers, any man in attendance could see the men nearest to him, but none could get a view of the whole. But during the raid, from his vantage point, Delany saw for the first time the size of the entire crowd and was shocked to see nearly 100 men empty out of the parking lot to evade the cops. In the morning, the police blotter mentioned only the handful of men who'd been arrested and not the 80 or 90 who got away. Both of these stories are about how the dominant narrative of the isolated gay man becomes self-reinforcing. A constant threat of police violence meant gay men stayed—
By the way, have you noticed that this is exactly what we talked about all day? You know, the mainstreaming of immigrant violence, of increased domestic thievery, non-violent crimes leading to murder everywhere, the terrorism that's suddenly all over the country. This is all mainstreaming. Again, I'm not saying that they're planning and causing like all the violence and the terror attacks. That's not what I'm saying. They might be, but like that's beside the point. The point is that all of these things are going to constantly be shown to you. You'll be inundated with this information to make you believe it because it's the mainstream.
Hidden from the cops and consequently from each other. And the terminology of the era being mostly dictated by straight people made it very hard to talk about queerness without reinforcing that narrative. Delany argues that among the most revolutionary things the 60s did to culture was the radicalization of language, redefining old terms and popularizing new ones, and giving marginalized groups a budding sense of their numbers. In short, two of the most powerful tools for making any marginalized group less marginalized are language and visibility. Folks, we're talking today about mainstreaming, the process by which a group or idea from the fringes of society moves towards the center, how strangers become neighbors, and how—
Now, this does not mean moving towards the center. This means how you pull from the center. As if we watched, let's say, the Democrats attempt this in the worst possible way that they could. But this is technically the idea they were trying to encompass in this election by drawing towards the center. Except the issue was their image of a center is just Republicans. Whereas the center, from my perspective here, of anything even remotely like rational is just the left. The left is the center. We just have to message to liberals the way that we would message to conservatives as well, but within the left message what we mean, you know? You have to— there are degrees of the left, and the lowest degree of the left is as close to the center as you can get because there is no center. It's just left and very much right. Everything past left, everything past, I mean, to be fair, even liberals are kind of right wing. American liberals are right of center. So you can't move to the center, but you should at the very least add in stuff that doesn't scare the center off because you will get them there. You'll get them with everyone else.
Thoughts become common sense. There's this concept known as the Overton window, which I am not going to describe because plenty of people have done so already. Link in the down there.
So someone mentioned this before. Democrats are like here. And I'm over here. We need to grab these two guys and treat everything from this line forward as the same. That's what I mean.
But in short,
like you need all of them. But messaging wise, the line cuts off here, even really some of these. Your messaging has to apply to the group that you are messaging to. But again, we go over all of this and it's all in this playlist. I really suggest you look at it and learn how to propagandize. Rohak, speak to their material conditions. The right wing already does this, but it's so exactly. It's so with mythology and narrative than actually by doing anything. There's a reason that I call these people retard socialists. It's because they're still mad at the same things. We watched Laura fucking Loomer talking about how Elon Musk is a welfare queen. They're mad at the same things. I mean, so do the liberals. Exactly. So you need to get them mad at the right thing. They just, like, they get to the very end, they get to class consciousness, they understand, like, how they're being fucked, and then they blame, like, Jews or immigrants instead of the rich. It's just that little bit that you need to shift. And so it's not really a lot of messaging you have to do. You have to be very specific and just constantly be mad at the rich. Your food is going up in price. I avoid that word. Which word? The rich or propagandize?
As a fringe group becomes more visible and their language,
you don't have to like slur them either. Like I call them retard. I'm autistic. I can say that. Okay. Several times I've had to explain why I am allowed to say that, but also like, why the fuck do we care? Most autistic people I've ever met don't give a shit, and it's never used in that sense anyway. Whatever. Look, just as long as your messaging passes the barrier and it speaks to their material conditions, it makes them angry at the wealthy rather than anyone else because it's always the wealthy causing their problems, then they will move over.
Language becomes more commonplace, their presence in society starts to seem normal. They become demystified. Some people who thought they were strange and threatening will start to warm up to them, though this doesn't happen across the board. Many who hated them when they were fringe will see their becoming mainstream as a kind of existential occupation of territory, as in, if this is normal now, what does that make me? But much of what is considered standard in—
That's literally what happened in Germany. People got sick of being poor, and then the right successfully blamed the Jews and communism. Exactly. I mean, to be fair, that's also exactly what happened here, by the way. People voted for Donald Trump because it's perceived economic benefit and because of the blame on immigrants. Mass deportations now was the banners they were holding. So it's the same exact thing. But you're right, Oxpecker. And in that, centrism doesn't exist anymore. It's just right-wingers. I don't necessarily believe that that's even like a demographic. More than like what? Like Liz Cheney? That's it. Yeah, okay. Why the fuck are we censoring words like this, guys? Like, I understand, like don't say the N-word, but also, we're going too hard on this. Everyone says retard. The right wing says it every day. They invented a new way to say it. They call them subtards now, which is worse than retard, all right? So stop being afraid to say the word, or you're going to get coded as a liberal, and they will never hear you. Everything you say will just... Whether or not, like, you don't have to say it, but don't get uncomfortable around it, because everyone is doing it to propagandize. It's part of the system now. It's too late. If you say it, they might hear you. If you don't, they might still hear you. If you complain about someone saying it, no one will ever hear you. It's the same everywhere. Life's shit, innit? Also, look at these brown people coming over here taking your jobs. Literally.
Society today has gone through this process. Now, straight folks like myself often think that greater queer visibility...
Again, do this to them. Life's shit, isn't it? Look around at all these rich motherfuckers who are taking all of your money, who are not giving you health insurance, who are trying to steal your social security. They're trying to steal your pensions. You paid for rich people to get socialized healthcare. If you live in New York State, you paid for 175 CEOs to go have group therapy. When's the last time New York State paid for your therapy session, your medical condition, your healthcare? None.
And the proliferation of queer
The same
language
thing.
is for our benefit. If our queer friends feel safe coming out to us and we know which words we should and shouldn't use, it makes it easier for straights and queer folks to be pals. And it is.
And take this exact idea and apply it to socialist rhetoric. The more you make the idea of the word, like, you don't even need to use the word socialism, just take like material conditions. That's a word that on the right you almost never hear. Say it more. It doesn't sound woke. It doesn't sound like it's like communist or material conditions is a thing that they will be able to conceptualize. And then that can be normalized as part of rhetoric. You can take, so the word socialism has already been poisoned, it's thrown away. You can't get rid of it entirely. It's still important, but you can't use it to propagandize. But you can use the concepts of socialism in smaller, more specific, narrow methods to propagandize. That's fine. Use the tools that they used against us.
It is true that no one gets mainstreamed without advocates in the existing mainstream, but let's not beat around the bush. Language and visibility are tools of consolidating power. Visibility means having a sense of your numbers. Common language means forming alliances. You get a bunch of formerly isolated gay men connecting with each other and accurately describing their experiences. You've got yourself a movement, with or without straight friends. This is why it's to the benefit of straight society to tell queer men that they are isolated, because isolated queer men are in no position to make demands. And just so it doesn't get left out of yet another conversation, Delaney is writing about gay men because the book is a memoir and that's his experience, but neither he nor I are ignoring that the gay rights movement was kicked off by trans women.
Oh yeah,
okay.
based.
While the example I'm using is a positive one that any progressive worth their salt should be in favor of, mainstreaming is a morally neutral phenomenon. Culture is plastic. Any fringe group or idea can become normalized, regardless of its inherent worth. And for a
Again, think about that. Any can be normalized. All you have to do is work towards it collectively. Normalize the rhetoric. Make people feel comfortable. Maori Meteor, that's how I turned my uncle from frying pan man, from a right-winger near Trump supporter, into someone who thought for himself. Yeah, it's possible. I have a friend in Florida who was going to vote for Trump, who moved from California to Florida because they were so in the MAGA movement. They didn't vote for Trump. You can make change. Call out conservative visibility in habitats it has no business being in, like punk or hip-hop music or the adult entertainment industry or Adult Swim. Absolutely. And also call out conservatives when they're not in those industries, but they still are using them. Call out conservatives for using AAVE. What, you hate black people so much, but you'll take their language? I thought you liked good old-fashioned American language. Maybe that doesn't actually exist, because everything that you have, you stole from other people. Thief. Call them thieves. They're thieves. They are.
Fringe group or idea can become normalized, regardless of its inherent worth. And for a certain subset of extremely online people with fringe beliefs who understand the ways mainstreaming has evolved in the attention economy, it can be a weapon. We need to talk about how a group of predominantly disgruntled 20 and 30-something white men congregating on anonymous image boards becomes a political movement whose members get profiled in the New York Times, whose writing patterns are recognized by most of the internet, and whose figureheads get staffed in the White House.
Oh, look. Yeah, I was going to say he's staffed in the White House before. Now he's chief of staff. It's fucking Goebbels. This is Stephen Miller.
House. Where did the alt-right come from? Mainstreaming is not a wholly organic process, because usually the people who get mainstreamed are actively working to become so. But people
That's a good one. Call them culture vultures. Again, it doesn't matter. You call Donald Trump a communist. I don't give a fuck. Use whatever tools you need to make them feel the way they made us feel, because it worked. They're weak. He's literally blood and soil. Yeah, he's Hitler.
usually have only so much control over how and how fast this happens. A group expands its language and visibility. If this leads to larger numbers and greater mainstream acceptance, the process repeats, this time with a bigger group and a larger audience. So long as there is growth, each cycle is more impactful.
By the way, this is what we're engaging in right now. I am using language, I am streaming to make it visible, and you guys are coming, you're watching, you're following, and the group is growing. The amount of people here is going up significantly. I've only been doing this since August, so it makes a massive difference. And you can see that it works because it's literally working right now. Thanks for the follow, Maori.
As the bigger a group is, the faster it gets even bigger, and the more common language becomes, the faster it proliferates. By all rights, if your beliefs are wildly unpopular, this process shouldn't work. Your language and visibility don't expand because too many people don't want to talk like you or about you. So, what then? Well, normally, you either give up or bide your time, but if you have a lot of media literacy and no real moral compass, you get it done dirty. If the media doesn't want to
Don't throw away your moral compass, but get it done dirty. You don't need to throw away your moral compass. You're not a neo-Nazi.
Cover you, make yourself newsworthy. Threaten to publicly out immigrants in front of a crowd, start a hoax about white student unions, lead a white power rally and leave the hoods at home. Do the kinds of things that journalists cannot in good conscience ignore. And once you've made yourself news, they'll feel they can't publish a condemnation without getting your side of the story. So, bam, you've got yourself an interview. The more erratic and dangerous...
Hey, you know what's a good example of this? Remember Milo? And like, you know, actually it was the debate grift cycle when a bunch of right-wingers would show up on college campuses because they wanted to piss off, they wanted protesters at those campuses to come protest their speech or their debate. And then that got them media coverage, which then got them more attention because we went and showed up and started protesting because we didn't like what they were saying. Maybe we should enter into, the underage sex with priests, Milo. Yeah, that one. Maybe we should, if you have the required prerequisite privileges to be able to enter these spaces on the right and piss them off by using rhetoric the way that they did and have them, you know, not, you're privileged enough so you don't get thrown in the hole. They will protest you and then the news will cover you. That's a method. Is if you're, you know, a white man living in the South, that's something you can do to think about.
You seem, the more they'll want to write a profile so people can figure you out. The article about how surprisingly normal...
Did we acknowledge preferences to sex because we became more illiterate or more literate? Neither. We've had, like, we've acknowledged preferences for sex for thousands of years. There are like gay people that were alive before Jesus that we know of. There's trans people that existed 4,000 years ago that we have records of. So, I don't know what you mean by that.
Well, you seem in person basically writes itself. If you want to spread a conspiracy theory, send it to a small local news site that doesn't have the resources to fact-check you. Once they publish something salacious, all the bigger news channels will have to talk about it.
It's Maori Meteor, to an extent, because sexuality is fluid just like gender. It can change based on your circumstances, your material circumstances, the context in which you engage with them. Like, these can all change. Sexuality is not black and white. It can move just like gender can.
If only to debunk it. Put provocative stuff in front of politicians because anything they retweet has to be news. In a pinch, you can always piggyback off a famous activist by making takedown videos or, if you're really ambitious, harass someone at a conference. Everyone is desperate for clicks. If you can generate them, you'll get your message out. And if nobody's adopting your language, adopt it for them. Make sure you and all your friends each have half a dozen fake Twitter accounts spamming the same terminology at anyone who discusses race, gender, orientation, or...
Maybe we should have some bot networks. Anyone know how to do that? Like, we don't have the money they do, right? This is the main issue between messaging from the left, is they have money and resources backing their side. Their systems are built for these things with ease. We have to do everything the hard way, from scratch. We have to work together as a community to manage these systems because we don't have the finances. But you can do it. You can make a bot network and make it work. It's not like if you were a coder, it's not. Yeah, I was gonna say I'm pretty sure it's not all that difficult. So maybe we should do that. Maybe we should start using the tactics they use against us. You could just use it in a nice way too, like have it spam positive shit that is also codedly anti-capitalist. I think they mean that if it grew in public-facing life, people learned words describing them, and the term bisexual first appeared in 1859 or some shit, despite bisexuality being... Well, I suppose, yeah, we defined the words more, not based on literacy, but based on social cohesion and, like, the lack of restrictions on it. There's a reason, like I said before, why the rates of people that have, like, neurodivergency or trans or are queer are going up, and that's specifically because we're looking for it more, paying attention more. It's people are less afraid to talk about it. Nearly 20 years ago, I'm still proud of being a kid filing paperwork on that.
Or ability. Put every Jewish name in parentheses until everyone on the internet knows what that means, whether they want to or not. Hell,
it was done poorly, and that's why I do agree with that. I know a site, but I haven't been there in a long time. If you want to link it on like Discord, I can have a look and see. Again, we all have to figure out how we can pitch in. Figure out what works for you. Do it.
Don't even do it yourself. Russia's not the only one who can make bots. Make thousands of bots. And make sure your real account, your fake accounts, and your bots all talk the same so that no one can tell the difference anymore. Make hashtags and get them trending all by yourself. And while you're at it, spam all the hashtags for movements you hate with porn and gore so they can't be used.
Yeah, don't do that part. But you know what you can do is anything that's like a trending topic about Donald Trump or Elon Musk. Don't just post like photos of Trump and Epstein together. Post photos of Elon and Diddy. Just spam everything with that. You can do it. That's not even like unethical. You don't even have to say anything.
And if your words and memes still aren't popular, just steal words and memes that are already popular. Just decide this means white power now. This is anti-feminist now. Saturate the web with your new usage, always insisting that you're doing...
And remember, Elon changed his profile picture to a Pepe, Kecius Maximus, remember?
...it ironically, while eroding confidence in anyone who uses these terms in the original sense. And never stop insisting that everyone would talk the same as you if there weren't so much damn censorship.
Call shit fake news. I started doing that too. You can do this. How has education shaped our understanding of what constitutes disrespectful discourse versus hate speech? It's entirely subjective now, Anthony. Whether or not like we produced methods of understanding before, now it's entirely subjective. You create 15 personalized Twitter accounts and then make posts and upload stuff on them, and it'll take effort, but it can be done. Yeah, well, again, like you can make bots do this stuff too. Setting up bots is easy, but elites own this medium, so it's not a fair game. Yeah, exactly. That's the issue, is they have the money. We need to do it from the ground up and work together, but that doesn't mean we can't use it. That doesn't mean that, like, on a smaller scale, not as big as them, it's not useful. I mean, look at Twitter. It's 75% of its bots. You can barely tell what's a bot and what's a human these days. Meta has announced that they're going to be adding bot users to Facebook and Instagram by the thousands that have like bios, Facebook profile pictures. They make posts. So use the tools. It may not be as effective. It's not a fair game, but you still have to play the game.
Delaney's experience was having few words to describe.
There's an insane amount of studies on 4chan now. Yeah, people that are too stupid to read, trying to read PhD level information. Again, 65% of American adults are functionally illiterate, so...
himself that could conjure images of a gay man in a loving community. What the alt-right does is shout, you just call everyone you don't like Nazi, while their people are giving interviews wearing Nazi paraphernalia.
You just call everyone you don't like a socialist. Stop being such a fucking liberal snowflake. That's an answer that you can give to them. You know, they're like, whoa, fucking, okay, socialist. Call them a liberal and call them a snowflake. Do it.
Yeah. They even argue that calling dudes marching to the tune of Jews will not replace us Nazis is somehow anti-Semitic. Meanwhile, they ask to be called identitarians and race realists. They want to stigmatize words that conjure images of white fascism, which, again, they very explicitly support, and replace...
They're constantly lying to you and then also doing the thing that they lied to you about in front of you. your brain gets desensitized because you're hit with two separate inputs, a lie and the action, but these two things don't match up. In any singular instance, you can work through that. Now imagine that's constant from morning to night. Everything you see, every last thing that you encounter is exactly that. It'll break your brain. And that's what the position that we're in is now. So counter that with some truth. You still have to, like, if you're going to do that at this level, then yeah, you need to lie a little bit. You call everyone socialist, call them a liberal. Make the words that they want to use against us stigmatized. Use the words that they use against us against them. And every friend you have is copying that language. Exactly. It makes a big difference.
Place them with words that conjure images of clean-cut philosophy majors. And where Delaney saw a group of 80 or 90 gay men reported in the papers as a group of 4 or 5, the alt-right wants to get reported as being much larger than it actually is. They want to draw attention to themselves by any means necessary, up to and including violence, but to ensure that anytime the cameras train on a violent act, there is a man in a suit ready to distance himself from it. To paint the picture that but for
that they never instigated the violence. Remember how I tell you when you go to a protest, your job is to get the shit kicked out of you? Stop fighting the police, don't throw rocks at them. Your job is to be on camera being brutalized by the police. If you fight back, then it looks like the police are justified. Whereas if any of you are not, you want to be Tiananmen Square. You want to be the guy in front of the tank. You want to be the people that are like, suffering so that other people can see it and have a thought, a singular brain cell function in their head, just ding, a light bulb go off. That's what you want to do. That's your job at a protest. It's not to fight. You want to fight. There's other context for that, not in a protest. Don't bring weapons to a protest either. Big issue from ousting them from the rest of society. They end up with nowhere but there to go, which draws more moderate people to extremism. Yeah. No, see, the thing is you need both the pen and the gun. I would prefer the pen, but they have all the gun, so you need gun and pen. Because if they have all gun and you have only pen, you lose. Gun beats pen. But gun and pen beats gun. It's rock, paper, scissors, lizards. Like, you need to get as much advantage as you can built up before you need it. I've said this before. I firmly believe that there will be a violent uprising in the United States in my lifetime. I don't think it will come from the left. I think the right will start it. But when they do, I want the left to be organized, ready to cooperate, and have our messaging validated, at least mildly in the subconscious of the average American, so that we can message in the critical situation more effectively. Go smart, go hard, go devious. Go be diabolical.
A few bad actors.
You are the boys fighting against Vought.
This is a peaceful movement of young, presentable intellectuals. This isn't simply a battle between different ideologies. This is a battle over the definition of normal. The alt-right knows how plastic culture can be. Their anger comes from the normalization of things they hate, and their movement exists because they believe anything that becomes mainstream can be made fringe again, which is why if you want to cater to them, you promise to reassert old norms. Much as we'd like to believe that people are driven by morality, most people are driven by the desire to be normal. And when the news is filled with images of swastikas, iron crosses, and tiki torches, the guy in the suit with the fashy haircut looks pretty normal by comparison. And that's why he wears the suit.
The Green Party is controlled opposition. They're not going to help. They're not making any change. They exist to prevent the rest of the left from making change. The left will emerge victorious from the ashes of fascist chaos. I mean, I hope.
Thankfully, the plasticity of culture cuts both ways. Just as surely as we can lose all the ground we've gained over the last—
Jill Stein is literally a Russian agent, Anthony, and I've evidentiated this pre-election. The Green Party hasn't held a seat since 2004. The Democratic Socialists of America won 50 seats in state legislature this election. 50. If you want to make change, fuck the Green Party. They're controlled opposition. The DSA is where you go to make change on the local level. Your people can think that, of course, you know, like the same thing as everyone else. I've challenged your worldview and now you're like afraid of it. You're saying you're reacting the same way.
last half century, everything the alt-right does to make itself palatable can be undone.
Oh, sorry, you're not in America. Well, your Green Party in Australia is pretty shit too, so I would imagine it's pretty shit everywhere else.
In fact, it's maybe beginning to happen. It's going to be a long road that will probably require changes to how media platforms generate traffic and a lot of new politicians.
Again, look, we sucked all the fun out of college appearances and they called it quits, right? We should be doing the appearances. They're going to fire all the university professors that are woke. Go do like college talks. I don't know. Whatever the fuck you want. Go and troll them.
But I want you to keep a phrase close to your heart. This is not normal.
For now.
That phrase has become something of a mantra since the election in 2016, and it can be misused. White supremacy, sexism, and every other kind of bigotry are part of the fabric of American life and always have been.
I don't believe in the values of any party. The party doesn't have values. Their actions are what matter. Their rhetoric and their values are nothing until proven otherwise. So, like, they have no values until they take power, and then they have to evidentiate that those values exist. Otherwise, I don't believe in them. The Green Party in the US is especially, it's just controlled opposition, to the point where the other Green parties worldwide distance themselves from them and wish they'd stop using the name. In some places, the Greens are like the most feasible way to get out of, get some socialized thinking power, but they're not the best long-term maybe. In some places, on local levels, you can work within, like with the Greens, but on a larger state level, depending, even in Australia, we have preferential voting. The Greens are an issue. They are a block to real change, not an actual pathway forward. You fight when, one, most people can see what's happening and naturally think, hell yeah, fuck 12. 2, bulletproof vests are normalized. Probably not a bad idea. 3, we can have fire trucks and ambulances on our side. That's also true. You can use all of these tactics. And Anthony, you're doing fine. I have no issue with what you're doing at all. I just disagree with some of your beliefs. It's not personal. How many seats did the DSA win? I believe it was 50. State legislature seats. State legislature seats 1, 2024. America, not Australia. Thank you. State legislature. Sorry, I was looking at state for a second. I don't want to go through each and every one of these specific, like, fucking one by one. Look, we covered it earlier. Bernie Sanders and, like, AOC went and made videos with them. So if you want to know more about that, Google DSA Bernie Sanders or DSA AOC. You'll get there. Let's finish this.
Even if this is more extreme than the usual, it's not by nearly as much as most privileged people like to think. So I want you to treat this less like an observation and more like a statement of intent. Whatever shit the alt-right pulls, I want you to say, this is not normal. This is not normal. This is not normal. We will not let this be normal.
Keep bringing chat back and then bringing it back up. The video's over anyway. So look, this is not normal. Is decent. We can do better. That was 6 years ago. This is not normal. We can do better than that. Just be snappy. Short answers. Don't give the right any reason to, like, think of you in a sense of a liberal. You want to separate yourself from the idea of the woke if you're trying to message. If you're not trying to propagandize, that doesn't matter at all. But again, you're not trying to win over the right. That's not the goal. You're trying to embarrass the right. You're trying to win over the people watching. That's the goal. You don't have to bring over the right-wingers. I'll keep this in. You need to work towards getting the 150 million Americans who didn't show up to vote angry. And you want to get them angry, not at the right. You want to get them angry pointed upward. That's the problem. The left and right fight can come after. Right now, we have up versus down. That's the real battle. Those are the people who want to take your money, your job, your happiness, your freedom, your autonomy. They want to conscript your children into the military at school. They want you to do prison labor as a slave. They want companies to be able to rent you as a human being out of prison and make you do labor because you stole a loaf of bread. That's what they want from you. That is. They want what they desire goes above anything anyone else needs. They don't view the rest of us as human because they're mentally ill. Too much money damages your brain. It removes your ability to care about other people. And when you're at that point, you're not going to make decisions that are good for others. You're going to make decisions that are good for you. It's not difficult to message this in a way that they understand because, again, we've seen time and time again, especially over the H-1B visa fight, they already know this and they're mad about it. They just are missing the conclusion. They're pointing their anger towards immigrants, towards queer people, towards the left. Point them upward. Even if they're pointed to the left, use that. Don't try and argue that the left isn't doing this. Point it up rather than argue against their point. Manipulate their thought process rather than try and argue against it, because you can't do that. You can't argue someone out of their political position, but you can talk them into an idea that they think is their own. Similar to when a badge and gun can transform people, power is intoxicating. Money is the easiest way to get a lot of power. True. Anyway, thank you all.